Elizabeth Austin, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Monica Williams. Also, we do have a resident here, and I'm going to give you the mic so you can tell us who you are. Well, thank you, Mrs. Watson. So we do have a community member here, Mrs. Burnett Watson. She did come in person, and thank you, Mrs. Watson, for coming out to the town hall meeting today. Also, we have our technology crew. We cannot forget those hardworking people who keep us attached to the internet. And so Mr. Barry Shumpert is here, and also Mr. Timothy Howard. So thank you all. Last but not least is my trusty sidekick, Mrs. Kim Lewis. And I'm going to give the mic to Kim for just a couple minutes so she can explain to you, for those people that are here in person, what paperwork you see in front of you. Ms. Lewis?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for attending this evening, everyone, in Zoom and in person. Much appreciated for you to come and give your input for our opportunity to apply for the ESSER III funds, which we have the potential to apply for upwards of $35 million of funding that will come directly back to the school district. So our efforts with the survey and with the town hall meeting is to garner input and direct these funds on a priority basis for specific interventions that the community and stakeholders interject as focus points of importance, along with all of the other things that the district can do and extend to our students and our staff and our families. So thank you for participating. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Singleton. We have a short presentation for you. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Lewis. And so we'll go to the presentation. If I failed to introduce Ishmael Sistrunk, it's because he already introduced himself and he's here in person. He's in another room, but he is also a part of our cabinet, the Executive Director of Communications. So Ishmael Sistrunk, thank you for being here as well. So on tonight, we are going to talk about the ESSER III. That's the acronym that we have so become accustomed to using the terminology. But when we say ESSER, it derives from the American Rescue Plan. That is a plan that was signed by our current president regarding Joe Biden. And the American Rescue Plan infuses and puts dollars in education to combat the COVID pandemic that we've been in. And so ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief Funds, okay? So when we say ESSER, E-S-S-E-R, it stands for Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief, all right? And so next slide, please. Oh, I guess that would be me, right? All right. All right, I think we'll be moving forward to the next slide. All right, thank you. All right, so what are the purpose of these ESSER funds, okay? When you think about Riverview Gardens School District receiving an additional $34 million, it sounds like an awful lot of money, but these funds come with limitations. These funds come with conditions. And so we just cannot spend these funds how we would like to spend them. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to gather input from the community, because we want to spend those funds on needs that address community needs as well. So the purpose of the ESSER funds are to support schools and districts in addressing the impact of COVID-19. Congress provided financial support through the American Rescue Plan and ESSER, E-S-S-E-R. The districts have the flexibility to use the ESSER funds on any activity authorized by the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, all right? So what are some of these things that we can do with ESSER, all right? And remember, the very top line says it has to address any impacts to COVID-19, all right? So anything related to ESSER, there has to be a link or a tie back to a disruption or an impact or a cause related to COVID-19. So what are some of the things that ESSER funds can be used for? Well, we can use them for assessments, okay? Testing our students, identifying and addressing unfinished learning. We learned that through this pandemic, there are some learning loss and there's some learning gaps that we must address with our students. Instructional material, all right? Always important for our teachers to have the resources and the technology that they need to operate their classrooms. After school and extended day programs. These are all uses or allowable uses of ESSER funds, all right? So we know that in some instances, we need to provide additional after-school programming for our students for that enrichment and knowledge that they need. Also, it's very possible with these funds, we can extend the school day, okay? That is an option as well. Summer learning, okay? Typically, sometimes students get the summers off, but we certainly want to, we know that we can use these funds for summer learning, okay? Also, professional development. Is my mic going out on? Can you hear me? Okay, all right. Professional development. That is also a use for the ESSER funds, all right? Our teachers need the training and knowledge and information in order to go forward with professional development. Mental health services. Mental health is a very important initiative, and in response to COVID, we've learned that there's some trauma and there's some other services that our students could benefit from. And so I believe one of our assistant superintendents here is starting to develop some comprehensive training programs related to trauma. And we as a cabinet have already started to dive into some of the impact of trauma services. And so I think you will see that as a major initiative with these ESSER funds in the Riverview Gardens School District. Also, software, hardware, and connectivity. Those are important. We learned valuable lessons when we first experienced this COVID crisis related to technology. And so we are a district now. We're happy to say that we're one-to-one, but we want to make sure that our students have the software, hardware, and connectivity, bandwidth. All of those things are important and related to ESSER funds. And I believe the last bullet there, are we reconnecting or?
Yeah, the people on Zoom could not see it, so I'm just trying to pull it up for
All
them.
right, no problem. Take your time.
Okay.
Go back.
I don't know which one. Which one?
All right, and one of the, I just mentioned software, hardware, connectivity is also an allowable use. Also teacher pay related to closures, okay? That's also an allowable use of ESSER funds to pay teachers for services related to the closures. And this information, again, if you're in Zoom land or if you're here, we will have this published and posted. So you can take good notes, but they don't have to be as good or copious as you'd like, because we're going to share this information with you. This recording will be available on our district website and our Facebook pages. Also, just very quickly, I want to mention, so what we're going to do and what we're here for tonight is to seek input. What would the community in Riverview Garden like to see done with the ESSER funds? And so in order for us to receive the funds, we have to put forth a comprehensive application, all right? $34 million, $34 to $35 million is what our district is allocated to receive. And certainly other districts in the surrounding areas, they have different allocations based on whatever criteria that they had to meet as well. So, but for our district, and transparency purposes, ESSER III funds are roughly $34 to $35 million. And so what have we done? What are we trying to do? First of all, we created a survey, the administration, the cabinet, with feedback from all of us, all of the departments. We created a survey and we sent this survey to parents, asking parents and students. We also sent it to teachers and community members, requesting direct input regarding how to spend the ESSER funds, okay? And we're going to include those suggestions. The survey closes on tomorrow, and so we will make sure that for those of you in Zoom land and here in person, we will make sure that you have the ability to get that survey if you have not already gotten it. So far, earlier today, I heard we had over 160 responses. So I'm very pleased to know that the community is giving us feedback and input as to what to do with the ESSER III funds. The application will reflect the district's plan to utilize those funds, and it is due by Monday, August 23rd, okay? We certainly want to make sure that that application is to DESE long before that date, okay? But that is the deadline, August the 23rd. So we want to make sure that our application is in so that we're able to access these funds. And certainly as the days go and weeks and months, if there are revisions that are necessary for the plan, then we will make those revisions based on community feedback and based on the needs that we identify with our students in the classrooms. So in addition, all right, help me again. So don't bring my if you want to just keep it button, yeah, I just answer that way. We apologize for having some technical difficulties, but keep focused on getting that feedback. For those of you that are in Zoom land, if you can hear us, you can certainly, if you have any questions, go ahead and start putting those questions in the chat. We will be happy to try and answer those questions. We've got the experts are in the room. Our superintendent and our assistant superintendents are here. And so we will try to move forward. So the survey results, once the survey closes, and we're going to close that survey on tomorrow, we are going to look at the results. We're going to analyze the results as a cabinet. And we're going to start developing a comprehensive plan for spending these funds, all right? And again, these funds do not all have to be spent in 1 year. These funds will cover us for a 3-year period, all right? So through the year 2024, I believe, these funds are good to cover. Also, the survey results will provide the core approach of all aspects of the current work of the district will align to our CSIP plan. So we must make sure that everything we do ties back to the comprehensive school improvement plan, which is very important for our school district. It is our Bible, so to speak. That's how we operate. Those are the principles and things that we believe in. And so we certainly want to make sure that everything ties back to the CSIP plan. So I mentioned here tonight, we're having a town hall meeting to gather feedback. So you're here tonight to give us feedback on what you would like to see done with the ESSER dollars. And again, a few slides ago, we went over some of the allowable uses. And so we want to make sure that you give us the necessary feedback so that we can hear your plans and what you want to see done with those funds. Okay. Moving right along, our screen here is frozen, but hopefully you can hear me. I actually have the same information here, so I'm going to move forward. So here's the timeline. So we're creating the plan. So again, I mentioned August the 23rd is the deadline, and the district by then will have surveyed the community, the members, our teachers union, our students, our parents. We want input from everyone. Okay, so this is just not a district leadership initiative. We want to hear from parents. We want to hear from students. We want to hear from all civic and social organizations in the community. Those organizations who promote social justice, educational equality, all of those things, all those community stakeholders, we welcome your input. We also want to, again, survey the leadership to make sure that we have the tools that are necessary, the curriculum necessary to implement these plans. We're going to analyze, and from that data, we're going to develop a list of priorities, okay? We're going to develop a list of priorities so that we will know exactly where to put the emphasis, where to put the most dollars, where to allocate based on information that you have shared and the survey results. To our CSIP plans. Again, we talked about academic support, social emotional support. We're going to look at the data and we're going to make those plans work for our students in our school district. All right, I'm stuck with you. All right, we're stuck again, but I've got a backup plan and I'm gonna keep on talking for those of you that are still listening. So just a sample or a draft of some of the priorities that we can be utilizing. Let me let you click. Maybe that would just the wrong place. Over there. Okay. All right. So one of the priorities I think that any school district should be looking at is doing whatever is necessary to improve student learning and outcomes from a trauma-informed perspective, okay? We've got to think of trauma and how COVID-19 has impacted mentally the well-being of our families in this community. A number of our students have lost parents, and parents have lost students, and friends and loved ones. And so we have to address the social, emotional impact of COVID-19 and the impact that it has had on our students. And so that is going to be a very important initiative, and we're going to provide those kind of services, whether it be software or hardware services, in person and virtual, tutoring for our scholars. Also, we're going to give teachers the resources that they need in their schools, in their individual classrooms, to be able to address any unique needs that may occur. One of the things that we talked about earlier today was putting money at the building levels. As long as it ties back to our data plans and our CSIP plans, then we're going to make sure that we put money back into the buildings so that our schools, our individual schools, have the ability to address those unique needs. Also, maybe a second priority could be expanding the 21st century schools, okay? The needs of schools are much more diverse than they have ever been. So schools now, we're operating this last year, we've been glued to a computer. And so we have to make sure that our buildings and our schools and our district has the equipment necessary to be able to adapt to whatever learning style is best for our students. So we have to be able to transform our buildings to ensure innovative and equitable spaces. We know that the CDC is recommending certain spacing guidelines. It was 6 feet, now I believe it's 3 feet of spacing. So those are things that we can do related to Esser Funds and those Esser plans. In addition, we are also we're also making it a priority to invest in our staff, okay? And that means providing our staff with the training and the development that is necessary. We're concerned not only about students' well-being and families, but our staff as well. Many of our staff members have been impacted by COVID and its impact on our daily lives as well. And so we want to make sure that there's wellness support and there's development support for our teachers. We are looking for vendors to come in and provide that equitable training and things that are important in order for us to be able to move our school district forward. We also want to be able to recruit teachers, some of the best and brightest minds, to continue to challenge our students to perform academically. And so I do know that a huge priority in our district is to address some of the vacancies that we have, which are very, very important. And speaking of that, we have a recruitment fair this Saturday at the Central Office Building, 1370 Northumberland. Let me throw that plug out there again. We have a recruitment fair this coming Saturday at 11 o'clock a.m. at our Central Office location. The address is 1370 Northumberland Drive. That's Northumberland, North, Umberland. Yeah, Northumberland, Northumberland. I believe I spelled it right. But it's here at the intersection of Northumberland and 367. So come out and see us Saturday. We're hiring for all positions in the school district. So we have teacher openings. We have custodian openings. We have openings in cooks and food services. We also have openings in instructional assistants. So we are hiring for just about everything and anything here at the Riverview Gardens School District. So please take advantage of the career fair. We have radio ads that are out there, but 11 o'clock on Saturday, we want to come and see us here at the central office in the Riverview Gardens School District. So back to the budget overview. So once we've submitted the district's American Rescue Plan or the ESSER plan, then our district will be eligible for approximately, we talked about $34 million. The table here shows how the funding may be allocated, and it's a sample, okay? we, again, based on the feedback, we're going to bring this information back to you. So, Ms. Burnett, this is a sample of basically how some of these funds could potentially be spent. So a lot of this, we expect to go to directly support our learners in the district and in the school. And so I mentioned those services up front, okay? We can potentially, based on feedback, spend 70% of our resources on those items, okay? Direct support for learning, instructional support, assessments, identifying and addressing unfinished learning, all right? We know that there's learning gaps right now where our students have been away from the classroom, and so we have to address those learning gaps. I've heard it said that COVID may have set a lot of our students maybe 1 to 3 years back, okay? And so we certainly want to make sure that we provide those resources. Again, after-school tutoring, professional development, health services, again, trauma, the new buzzword, we have to address those traumatic services. Facility improvements. You will know that there are plans, or tentative plans to upgrade our some facility improvements in air conditioning, HVAC, heating, ventilation, and cooling, filters into the school systems. So we want to make sure that the air quality is good in our buildings, and that is also another major initiative and an allowable use of these funds. Also, just training and procedures creation. We know that that is very important to give our teachers and our staff the resources and trainings that are necessary. So that is an example, you go to the next slide, of one of the ways in which we can utilize those ESSER III funds. So one of the things that we would look at is measuring the effectiveness and impact of our financial investments. And so what we will do as a team is we will align the metrics to cover our CSIP plan. Again, our CSIP plan is our continuous improvement plan, our continuous school improvement plan. And so we will track progress on a data sheet. And so we'll look at student learning. We'll look at the methods. It could be the STAR data. It could be through observations, through learning walks. Look at the frequency of these, maybe 3 times a year or weekly on some of these. We'll look at the demographic data. We have access to panorama surveys, student attendance data, and we can look at the frequency associated with those. Also, we're going to look at the perception data, stakeholder experience. Look at possibly having focus groups on a quarterly basis. And again, these are just examples. These are not cut and dry or etched in stone. We're looking for community feedback. Also, school processes. One of the best ways to evaluate school processes is through observation and learning walks. Evaluation of instructional programs in the school, perhaps doing all of this on a monthly basis. And so we want to measure the impact of what these dollars are doing, or the investments that we've made in our schools. So typically, what happens here after tonight, we'll talk about next steps. So we're going to post our plan on our district's website on August the 11th for public review, okay? So that's coming up here pretty soon. We want to give our board an opportunity to review a draft, and we'll post the plan on our website in a few days, next week. The survey results from stakeholders will be available to view on the website as well. So you will be able to look at the input that you've given, okay? And you'll be able to help us drive those priorities. We talked about those 3 to 5 different priorities, and you'll be able to help us drive those. Also, district leadership will work on the detail and implementation of the plan. It's always important to have our district leaders, our building principals, our cabinet members involved in the details and the implementation of the plan. Also, the board will review the application and budget plan at a possible special meeting. We know that this plan has to be in by August 23rd. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting is on August 24th. And so we will possibly have some kind of a special meeting to approve the plan based on the community input. And again, we will plan on submitting all of this to DESE by August 23rd. Okay. So for those of you in Zoom and here, at this point, that concludes the information that we have about ESSER. And so what we would like to do is maybe share some of the questions, maybe Ishmael, some of the questions that you've gotten in the chat. We will open up the room here for those of you that are in person. And we would like to hear some of those ideas and concerns that you have. So I'm going to call on my cabinet members because I know they have some good ideas as well to share, even in human resources, when we talk about recruiting teachers and things like that. And we're going to hear from those members. But Mrs. Burnett, I'm going to ask you a question while you're here. I'll put you on the spot. And I want to give you an opportunity to just share based on what you've heard tonight, some of the allowable uses. Maybe you have some students who've gone through our school system, who are currently in our school system. What are you hearing from families that students will be needing to return to school? Let you have an opportunity to share. Teachers will benefit from different trainings. You think our students will all right, let me try to repeat some of this feedback that we got from Mrs. Burnett, who's here. She says that she believes that a lot of our students could benefit from that one-on-one support. So those smaller sizes, or those smaller class sizes, that one-on-one support and one-on-one instruction for our students. And so we do think that that is a valuable resource. We know that the smaller that ratio is, the more impact that we will have on our students and our student outcomes. And so that is very important. I'm going to ask Dr. Tanya Patton if she will come up just very briefly and just talk about some of the trauma-informed services. Again, Dr. Patton has worried me to death about money from ESSER to address some of the needs for our students. And she is certainly going to bring those resources to our district with trauma-informed services. Tanya Patton is over our student services department, which includes our mental health, our counselors, and our safety and security officers. So Dr. Patton, I'm going to let you talk a couple minutes about some ideas and feedback that you've been able to gather so far.
Good evening, everybody. Again, thank you for being here. One of the things that we are heavily focused on, as Dr. Singleton has already shared, is our trauma-informed practices. That is in the works. We have started training our trauma teams and our building principals, and that will move to this year-long training twice a month for all of our teachers, all of our staff members, so that we know how to support our students. We'd like to grow that, and we'd like to get to the trauma-informed practices for our community, as well as restorative justice within our buildings. So we are working on a lot. Over the course of this COVID, a lot of parents have reached out looking for mental health support for themselves as well as their students. So we'd like to also offer that. So we are looking at a lot of social emotional trauma-informed practices that we want to bring out, after school programs that we'd like to bring out, community gatherings that we would like to bring everyone out and get us together so that we can connect as a community. So we are throwing around lots of ideas. We would love to have your feedback. So if you have it,
completed the survey, please do that so that we can hear your voice. This is an important time for us to know what our community is looking for from our school district. Again, thank you for being there. Thank you for coming out, and please make sure to complete those surveys. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tanya Patton. Dr. Patton has become one of my favorite people over the last year. And so we've worked together to bring forth those resources. I'm going to ask Ishmael Sistrunk if he would come. There are some questions and comments in the chat. And so we certainly want to make sure that we acknowledge those. While he's coming, I want to mention from an HR standpoint, one of the allowable uses of these funds is a grow your own teacher program. And that is a very, very quality resource where we invest in non-traditional students and help them become teachers. So we grow our teachers from within. So maybe you're an aide, or maybe you're a secretary, or maybe you don't have that teaching certification. These funds do allow us to invest in you and help in the transition to become educator certified. And so those are also some allowable uses, I think, because to really face it, everybody is having a teacher shortage. It's not just Riverview Gardens School District. There's a shortage of teachers nationwide. And we know that some are hesitant to come back to the field because of COVID. And so we certainly want to look at the possibilities of spending some of these funds on a grow your own teacher program. At this point, I'm going to ask our communications director, Ishmael, if he could come and ask some of those questions in the chat. And one of the experts in the room will try to answer those for you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Singleton. And I'll address a few questions. One, we had a comment from Tamika Stevens. She said some families have shared that they were unable to complete the survey from a mobile device. Now, the survey should be able to be completed from a desktop device or a mobile device. If anybody is having trouble, what I'd recommend is you come to the district, our buildings, they are opening the computer labs to help people register. So if you cannot complete it via phone, if you don't have access to a desktop, then contact your school and see when you can come in. The survey takes 5 minutes, it's not very long. It should work from a phone, but we know sometimes technology doesn't always cooperate. So keep trying or call your school and we can help accommodate that for you. Next, let's go to one of the questions that we have or comments. Okay, Ms. Leslie Wallace says there were huge problems with bus driver students being stranded, not able to get to school due to unavailable bus drivers before COVID hit. So maybe funding can also be applied to hiring enough qualified bus drivers. Dr. Singleton will speak to that as well.
Ms. Wallace, thank you for your question and concern. And I will say, just like our schools are experiencing a shortage of teachers, the bus companies are also experiencing a shortage of drivers. And so our superintendent and I were just at an event last week, and we spoke with those leaders at our bus service providers. Let me say, first of all, we contract out our bus services. So we don't directly employ our drivers. We have a contract with First Student Services, and they provide the drivers. But we were at an event last week, and one of the managers had alerted us that they are having real difficulties competing with other entities for drivers, and they have indeed risen their starting pay. I believe for bus drivers with First Student, I believe they're making almost upwards of about $20 an hour as an incentive to come forward. And so some of those concerns are being addressed. Certainly we will utilize whatever supports that we have, whatever resources that we can give to support those drivers, to support our students and our scholars. We never want transportation to be the reason that our students do not get to school and get the education that they deserve. So thank you for that comment, and I certainly will make sure that that's a part of any feedback that we publish. So let me give the microphone back to Ishmael. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singleton. I think this next one is going to be for you too, as a follow-up question from Ms. Wallace. And it says she would like to know what happened to the funding that came in July 2020. So I'm not sure if this is ESSER 1 or ESSER 2, but I believe it's another round of ESSER.
Okay, so transparency, our district were the recipients of ESSER 1 funds, ESSER 2, and will be the recipient of ESSER 3 funds. So ESSER 1 is typically the original CARES Act funds, and our district received about $2.8 million. The majority of those funds, of the $2.8 million, were spent on addressing our one-to-one gap with students. So we spent a significant amount of those funds on technology, hotspots, tapping into our internet services. But the bulk of those monies, a lot of those funds were spent on actually providing the device, okay, for our scholars. Also, that's where a number of our PPE resources were attached to. So those funds, there's a heavy emphasis on cleaning. We did a lot of cleaning and a lot of disinfecting in our buildings, masks, face shields we provided for all of our employees. We did a number of things related to making sure that our buildings and services, our building services were equipped. We invested in fogging machines so that we could do our own cleaning and disinfecting. Another part of those monies went to human resources to employ a substitute staffing service system. That was also another important use of those original ESSER dollars. So, of course, anyone that wants information on what those funds were spent on, we have an open door policy. We'd love to provide that information to you. But the bulk of the original funds, you mentioned in July, I think those funds probably came somewhere around the April and May timeframe. But a lot of those went to addressing those computer needs and making sure that our students had those devices, hotspots, connectivity, and all of that for our scholars so that we could address the remote learning. So that's where a lot of those funds went.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Singleton. Thank you, Dr. Singleton. The next is a suggestion that we have again from Tamika Stevens, and she suggests that the funding be used for assistance with uniforms and supplies.
Hello again. So we have a community partner. The Little Bit Foundation helps us a lot with our uniforms. They are there. They spend millions of dollars in our district every year to provide uniforms and supplies. So if there are any families out there that are looking for uniforms or supplies, I ask that you contact me at central office. We can get you connected with the Little Bit Foundation, complete one of their forms, and we can make sure that your student has uniforms as well as school supplies. We also have many community partners that donate school supplies as well. So please let me know. You can contact me at central office. My name is Tanya Patton. I can work with you to make sure that your student gets uniforms as well as school supplies. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patton. The next question, next question here is from A. Williams. They ask, are there plans of investing in existing teachers with college reimbursement for master and doctorate degrees? I'm gonna take this.
Wow, that seems like a complicated question. So let me say at this point, our district, it would certainly be good if we could utilize those funds to further invest in our teachers to make sure that they have the skills necessary. We talked about an emphasis on professional development and those things. So we are going to bring in outside vendors, and we're going to train our teachers and others to train other teachers in our school district. In terms of providing or utilizing those resources for others to advance their own academic careers, I'm just not, we'll have to do a little bit more research and to make sure that is the case. Now, I understand that in high needs area, that this may be the case. So if that is an allowable use, we certainly would like you to take the survey and include that data. But I'm being told that that is possibly an allowable use, especially in high needs areas where we're helping teachers go back and get those advanced degrees and certifications. So it's certainly something that we will look into a little bit further. Thank you for that question. Michelle, do you have more?
Okay, the next question is from Rochelle, and she asked, after applying for the grant, how long will the response time take to know if the grant was approved?
All right, so our district will be awarded the $34 million. There's no question about it. We just have to put a plan together that matches and aligns to what we're going to do with those services. So the applications are due on August 23rd. And so they actually can go back. We can go back to the beginning of COVID, and that's that March timeframe of 2020. So March of last year, these funds can go back to address those resources or those concerns or those disruptions related to COVID. But we fully expect, I would say within a matter of weeks, that DESE will evaluate our application and allow us to start spending those funds. Because it is going to be critical that we spend those funds appropriately, but without hesitation to address those concerns. There are some things that we may need in order to start the school year. There are some things that we may learn as we get started that we need. And so those Esser funds will certainly come in handy. So to directly answer that question, I think in a matter of maybe a couple of weeks, we will see our applications approved, and we will see the abilities for us to start utilizing those monies and those funds for our plans. So, Ishmael?
Okay, the next question. And thank you again to all of those who are present on Zoom, who are submitting your questions and your suggestions. We really appreciate it. If you are still out there viewing, if you have a question or if you have a suggestion, please don't be shy. Put that down in the chat. We will read them and we'll address those questions just as we're doing here. The next question that we have, Dr. Singleton, or suggestion, says that funds should be spent on updated books, after school tutoring, and anything that will help the kids excel.
All right, so let me address your question, and that's a really good suggestion. But there's a mandate with these funds that 20% be used directly to address learning loss, okay? And that goes directly in line with improvements and upgrades to our curriculum. So our ELA adoption, we're looking at possibly adopting some new ELA curriculums, some math initiatives. All of those things are allowable uses of these funds. But the federal government has said 20% of all monies have to address learning loss. And so when it relates to after-school tutoring or some additional online resources, all of those are going to be included in the plan. And we believe all of those fall under the jurisdiction of learning loss. So that is an awesome suggestion. And we certainly are going to make sure that those plans are there for our scholars to address some of those needs. So thank you for that suggestion. Is there anything else out there in the chat land, or anybody here inside have any comments or any questions? Going once, going twice. Okay. All right. All right, we got another one. We got time.
This is from Rochelle again. She said, I would love to see the schools invest in plastic partitions in the classroom for COVID-19 protection.
So, believe it or not, we made an investment in some in partitions with our original CARES Act money. So the first pot of money that we got, and I think our district got about $2.7 million under the original CARES Act which we're now referring to as ESSER I. And we bought partitions and we bought things to protect student barriers. We bought plexiglass. You'll see that there's plexiglass in all of our front offices, our secretaries, in our central offices, and everywhere. We have those plexiglass, those barriers, and those protections. We will evaluate the needs in our classrooms. And if that is a major need and a concern to address those individual classrooms, and again, we're going to allow schools and the ability to spend those their individual funds on unique needs in their schools. And so if there is a school that has a need to have those individual barriers, then we certainly will give them the resources necessary to make that happen in those classrooms. So that's a good suggestion, and we appreciate that as well. Is there any other feedback?
All right, we have another comment from Mrs. Wallace. Says, I would like to see coding classes and STEM programs.
All right, Ms. Wallace, we're going to make sure you're sitting down with us to write this program, write this plan, because I think you've given us a lot of good ideas, and we value that and we appreciate that. So coding classes and also STEM programs. So we know that the hot button topics are topics in our schools are the STEM, the science, the technology, the engineering, and math. And so those are initiatives. When we talk about learning loss, those are initiatives that we're going to explore. And so we're going to look and see what those STEM curriculum requirements are. And we're going to utilize those resources to make sure that our students are excelling in those areas. I was a math lover myself. So I certainly know that the value of having those STEM skills to be competitive in today's environment. So awesome suggestion. I like the fact that coding is also really important. I think that that's another path. Not every one of our students will go off to the military or go to college, but those other skills that we can pick up, the more skills we can give them, the better equipped they are to be lifelong learners. So we will look into that as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And just another note to Mrs. Wallace in the chat. You see we have a response from one of our instructors that says, if your child is at the high school, then have them sign up for one or both of the PLTW classes. So those are options that are already there for you. Do we have another question? And it says, has there been thought put into COVID stipends and or bonuses for existing staff for the 21-22 school year?
All right, so I know that that question is coming from a teacher or at least a current staff member. So let me address that question because that certainly has come up on several occasions. We are going to, at some point over the next several months, to engage in those discussions with our school board regarding those COVID stipends. I cannot make any promises, but what I will say is we will lead those discussions and we will make sure that it's done in an appropriate manner. One of the good things that we did do was we did just give raises in our school district. We had not had raises in the past few years. And so we did make improvements to our salary schedule, thanks to you all there for passing Proposition E. Proposition E allowed us to make improvements to our salary schedule. So I will say that we will lead those talks and discussions and try and bring our board along. But I know a number of other districts have done them. I'm well aware of that. And so we're going to make sure that we drive those discussions. And hopefully, we're hopeful that our board will allow us to move in that direction. So it's a very strong possibility that may be possible. Okay.
Now this is a follow-up question. It says, has there been thought into using funds as an incentive for hiring new teachers?
So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we did improve our salary schedule as it relates to our school district salary schedule. So we made improvements. We moved our starting pay. We were, for a starting teacher with a bachelor's degree, we were at $38,433. Our new starting pay for teachers is $42,000. And so we made a significant improvement in a lot of those starting pays because we wanted to recruit, attract and recruit some new teachers. And so you'll see that reflected in the salary schedule that our board adopted. And so we will continue to study the uses of these funds, and whatever these funds allow us to do within reason, we will certainly make sure that our students are the benefactors and our staff and our employees as well. No one will push that more than me, is to make sure that our students and our staff are well taken care of with these ESSER dollars. So we're going to just make sure we do the right things.
She thanks you for that. She says, as a newer teacher on step one, thank you greatly for the increase. We do have another question. It says, has the district addressed air mitigation on day one of school start?
So let me say this. We have a board agenda item going to the board this coming Tuesday. We are asking for discussion and action because one of the uses of our ESSER II dollars is to improve the air quality in our schools. So we are investing in some new rooftop units. We're investing in some changing filters in all of our buildings. So that is a huge priority. Right now, we're in the individual classrooms, we're cleaning, we're making sure that the buildings are ready for our teachers to return. Our teachers return next week. And so we're doing all we can to get these buildings prepared. So to answer your question, you will see immediately, within a matter of days, contractors on site addressing the air quality and the airflow that we need to so eloquently upgrade in our school district. So thank you for that suggestion, but we are working on those plans right away.
Okay, and I don't see any new questions or comments here. We are just a little beyond 6:30, so we will be winding down. There are a couple of things that I do want to mention. Thank you to everyone who was here in person. Thank you to everyone who has joined the Zoom. I do want to mention a couple of things. I think Dr. Singleton mentioned before, we do have a career fair coming up on Saturday. It'll be at the Riverview Gardens Administration Building from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So we are still recruiting teachers, custodians, cooks, really all throughout the district, all positions that are available, we are recruiting. So if you're looking for a job, if you have family or friends that are looking for employment, definitely send them up. In addition to the ESSER III survey, which I have linked it in the chat, the comments for tonight. So if you have not filled out that survey, even though you've participated today, make sure you fill out that survey. It takes 3 to 5 minutes. It's not very long at all, but you can share your critical opinions, suggestions, and ideas, and we can definitely take that into consideration as we formulate our plan. We are also looking to improve the district's communication attempts. So we have a communication survey. You can go to our website, rgsd.k12.mo.us/survey, and you can fill out a survey just based on what the district is doing well, what the district can improve on, because we're working on a comprehensive communications plan, and we want input from staff, from the community, from parents. So make sure you fill out that survey as well. If anybody else has anything as we wind down, again, we thank you for joining us today. I think this has been a great discussion regarding the ESSER III funds. We really appreciate the community support, the community input, and so we'll work on getting that application in, and we'll follow up with the community once we have the results and the feedback from the federal government. So thank you for joining. We're going to sign off again. You can check the chat here. You can check the YouTube. We'll make sure that we have a link to the presentation. I know there were some technical difficulties earlier, I linked that in the comments, but I'm gonna link that on the YouTube comments as well if you want to go and cycle through that for yourself. But thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time. Yeah, I'm gonna do it, but I want to save the chat first. That was about 17.